welcome to the good life. I almost feel like it's welcome to the jungle. Welcome to Suville Jungle.
A little bit different of a spin, but we'll take it. We'll take it.
We'll take it. Hello there, Benny.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well. Good morning. Cooling down finally.
104, 102.
We didn't see those temperatures, but it was up. It was the low 90s, but that's hot for Washington.
Oh, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing beats Pacific Northwest summers. It's so stunning, so beautiful.
But we're taking a break this week. That's good for all of us.
It is. Water the earth, my love.
Yeah.
How are you? How are the boys? How's life?
Good. We're all getting ready for another weekend we got camping on the books for next weekend. So yeah, we're gonna do that. We do a once a year trip down to the Olympia area, and we'll do that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Of course, I'm an empty nester. It kind of comes with a double-edged sword.
You can still go camping with the girls.
Yeah, no, they want nothing to do with mom.
Oh, wait.
I mean, come on.
You could change it to glamping, and then they might change their mind.
No, I've tried to fly them to Cabo, to Arizona. They're too busy. They've spread. I know.
They say no to Cabo?
They say no.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Let me talk to them. I'll get out. Let me talk to them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and WSU is starting up pretty soon.
Yes.
And so is Arizona.
Yep.
So everybody's going to be heading out. So with that being said, all of you, please be safe. Mind your P's and Q's.
Yep.
Your peoples and I was going to say peoples and potty breaks because that was the only thing with the PPs I could think of.
It goes all together. It's funny.
Oh, you know what kind of lineup we got today. All right, guys. We are having fun. We always do that on the show. We really do. We're talking about serious topics, techniques, mind hacks, positive psychology, traumas. We're here to reclaim, rediscover, and redesign our life that is authentic and genuine for ourselves. That has been my number one goal, my why, never to ever, ever diminish myself for somebody else's actions, behaviors, thoughts, and or values. So deciding what and getting very clear on what is important to you, authentic and genuine to you. You guys have heard me talk about that. Authentic and genuine are very anchoring, grounding words for me, and you're welcome to adhere those to your values. Today, and like last week, I'm going to be doing some education. I'm probably going to be doing it throughout August. Today, and thank you, by the way, audience, for sending me all of your questions and requests. And I will tell you, yet again, boundaries have made it to the top list. We're going to talk about boundaries today. We're going to go pretty deep. One of my teachers, Nancy Levine, in fact, I've got one of her books right here. I'm going to be talking about some of the things that I teach, what I have learned, and then I'm also going to be talking about setting boundaries that will set you free, some of the stuff that Nancy Levine talks about in her book. I have been blessed to interview her, I think, a couple times, and I'd love to bring her back on again. But in the meantime, we're going to be talking about things that I have found on my journey about boundaries as a recovering people pleaser. And now, mind you, I say that, and I say that with love. There's no real emotional charge behind that, but I also need to reiterate to you guys that I love being nurturing and kind and compassionate. That's a huge personal value to me. Now I am just that way. I'm just that giver, that nurturer with boundaries. And I think in boundaries, and then also learning a respectful no, and then the language on how to set up those boundaries. Because as a loving, nurturing person, it's not that my intention is always to come from compassion and love. It's never my intention to hurt anybody, let anybody down. And I know that's not me, it's on them. However, I choose to show up a certain way. And that is, again, all about what I teach and getting clear on who you are and how you're showing up. So with that, we are going to get started. We're going to jump into boundaries. I'm going to remind all of you how to get the newsletter if you want a copy of this show. And all you got to do is go to claritywithsue.com, and the newsletter little insignia or box or whatever it's called is going to pop up for you. So just sign up for it there. We only send it out once a month. You'll get links and gifts from guests or me. You'll get updates, love bumps, giggles. I pull cards every year, or not every year, every week, to set the intention and just to kind of get us clear and focused on what could be going on under the hood, under the hood. And you guys have also known me as the Gratitude Cafe as well. It's all the same messaging. We just kind of changed the branding a little bit. It's still me, Sue, with love. We are live on YouTube. All you got to do is type in 1150 KKNW. We're also streaming live on Twitter. And what's the other handle, Benny?
Well, we are simulcast 3 areas. We have YouTube, Twitter, and then also Facebook.
Facebook, that's it. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Benny, I know you're working so hard to get all 3 of those streaming. You're a superstar. Thank you.
Well, if I remember to push like one single button like I did last week, I did this week. So I've double checked. We should be okay.
Yay! It's all good.
So
okay.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. Yes, thank you, Benny. Okay, we are going to get started, you guys. We're going to talk about some boundaries. I wanted to, this popped up today, and I thought it was so important. So I'm going to read this to you, and then I'm going to read to you from Nancy Levine. One of her, what does she call it? Hang on a minute, let me look here. The Anatomy of a Boundary. So I'm going to get into that, and we're going to talk about boundaries, and we're going to talk about techniques and tools. Just again, it's getting clear. And you can get clear, you're going to get the education, you're going to start your transformation. You hear me talk about the 3 phases of transformation. I tell you this because it's important that you understand the basis of your transformation. It's the awareness, then it's the clarity, the education, the teacher will show up in your life. And then as you transform and integrate and align with that language and the new platform, the new lifestyle, the new language, that's within the transformation and alignment and figuring out what language works for you. So it's really important that you understand those 3 phases. So I would say probably with the radio show, we're in the education. So here we go. And it's not probably, it is. So listen to this. Let's set the intention. There are so many good things flowing into your life right now due to the work you have put in to break free of limiting beliefs and improve your outlook on life. Your mindset has transformed your reality. You are nowhere near the same person you were a year ago. Give yourself credit and give yourself a pat on the back for the momentum you are generating. These inner shifts positively affect everyone you encounter. Love on yourself, my friends. I think that's such a great message and so valuable. And it's another reminder about having the CCs in life, compassionate curiosity for yourself and others as you are in the transformation, as you are walking across your bridge of transformation, your bridge of fear, whatever that might look like. Okay, let's jump into boundaries. And again, I want to remind all of you, thank you so much for sending me your questions and requests and conversations, what you really, really wanted to hear from me. And again, yet again, like I said at the top of the hour, boundaries is it. So I'm going to read to you the anatomy of boundaries out of one of my teachers, Nancy Levine. Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free, one of her latest books. And she goes on to say, the boundary is the marker where I can no longer be myself, no longer congruent with or authentic to who I am. When I am about to lose myself, that's the boundary point. And yet, time and time again, we miss it. The disconnection from self that amplifies the way my intention pulls toward you, as if my nervous system is being dragged by a magnet. I have been lost and we are bound, and I need to find the rhythm of who I am without you while with you still. Oh, did you hear that? That is so beautiful. I have been lost and we are bound, and I need to find the rhythm of who I am without you while still with you. The vital recalibration back to me, knowing where I end and you begin. My body and my mind rest, restore, and regulate best when I'm alone and not satisfying someone else's needs. Slowing down now, I allow myself to rest. I have been depriving myself of, and by overgiving and being on high alert. Time to liberate me instead of rescuing everyone else. Only I can restore my resources. No longer willing to do whatever it takes, when whatever it takes comes at such a high cost to me. I'm no longer allowing an old commitment to people-pleasing, external validation and approval to override my commitment to my own truth and authenticity. The patterns we are running won't dissolve by someone else's making that change. My boundary is mine alone and honor. We think our withholds, we keep us safe, but revealing is what allows connection and healing. Ah, so good. And if you guys are just tuning in, that was The Anatomy of a Boundary by one of my great teachers, Nancy Levine. Now, let me ask you something, guys. Do you put other people first? Do you make plans? Letting them pick the movie, letting them pick the restaurant, the vacation? Do you still find yourself feeling resentment towards others because they don't seem to take your needs into consideration? Can you relate to that? I know I can. And taking accountability and responsibility is the number one thing. It's the awareness that it is your responsibility. You teach people how to treat you, and this is such a huge, valuable lesson. And I know when you genuinely care and nurture, that stings when you hear that, to say, wait a minute, holy shiitake, I have taught people to treat me like Crappuccino. You really have. And I'm going to talk about something that I also learned with Nancy Levine. Own that it's yours who has been crossing your own boundary and taking responsibility in our own lives. I talk so much about that because as a recovering people pleaser, it is so important that you are accountable for telling people what your needs are. So let's go back to the clarity aspect on all that I've been teaching. I'm walking my talk here, folks. It is you stepping back and getting clear on what you truly desire, what your needs are. So the number one tool when I was starting my transformation and my journey with boundaries and a recovering people pleaser and getting really clear on what that meant to me, what that looked like, how it showing up in my life, how I could speak my boundary without, feeling like I was being rude. The word try, taking the word try out of your vocabulary is hands down the number one technique and tool, mindset hack, self-regulating that I have done. And I recommend you doing that 24/7 to yourself with the inside dialogue and externally as well. And then, following up, you're taking the try out of the vocabulary is a way of forcing you to get clear on what you truly want, where you want to expel your energy, where you want to, and that's a big thing. Let's put a pin in that, because I've also had clients that have come to me, and when I'm teaching on these types of platforms, when they come to me and I am so exhausted, I'm burnt out, I'm tired. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get really clear on where you're expelling your energy. Are you saying too many yeses and not enough nos? What is authentic? Again, what is authentic and genuine to you? And what is that alignment? What is your personal code of conduct? That's something else that I teach and talk about, and getting really clear about your personal code of conduct. So let's talk about taking responsibility for our lives. And there was something else that I wanted to talk about too within the boundaries as well. And that is sarcasm. And I have talked about this and taught about this. And I just am going to lovingly, delicately have a conversation around sarcasm and boundaries and how you're showing up and how sarcasm shows up in a manner that you're not getting your needs met. That means back up. You are not clear what those needs are, and you feel as though perhaps you have been taken advantage of. You have resentment that's going on. Something's off, right? So we're going to talk about boundaries and sarcasm. I want to talk to you really quickly about taking responsibility for our own lives. And I'm going to read a little insert again from Nancy Levine, one of my teachers. And her first and foremost, the first step is that taking responsibility, knowing that boundary setting is yours, and you're to blame. That you teach people how to treat you, and it's a big lesson to learn. And I'm saying that with love and compassion because I'm walking it too, guys. So here's what Nancy Levine talks about: taking responsibility for our lives. Yes, it's true. You're crossing your own boundaries in your life. Nobody can cross your boundaries unless you allow it. Ouch. This one hurts, I know. But if you're going to learn how to set effective boundaries, you have to face it. And this is the face it when you guys heard me the last week when I was talking about the contrast. The contrast is understanding and learning and getting clear, or facing it, crossing the bridge of initiation, crossing the bridge of fear, facing it, becoming aware of. That contrast is simply an opportunity for you to learn. And it's really important that you keep reminding yourself that, so you don't get down on yourself. You don't go down that rabbit hole of more fear, of resentment, of doubts, shames, guilts, all of that mucky muck. We want to keep you above the line. We want to keep you and your nervous system in homeostasis as best as we can. Again, going back to getting clear on how you want to show up, those self-regulating techniques and tools that I've taught you before. So looking at that contrast with the CCs in life, another superpower tip, compassionate curiosity, just get really curious. Stay curious. Stay in that intention, right? Okay, so let's get back to what Nancy says. But if you're going to learn how to set effective boundaries, you have to face it. It is your responsibility to recognize, set, and communicate the boundaries you need so that others have been given fair warning. Then if your boundary gets crossed, you must take a stand and not get out of the situation where your declared limits are not being respected. If you don't, you're crossing your own boundaries. That's so valuable. So let's go on to talk about what Nancy says here. It says, when it comes to everyday limits, this book is focused on, there simply is no such thing as someone else violating your boundary. The responsibility is yours. Not that your overbearing parent, your annoying coworker, or your unruly kids. I don't want to face this truth either. For a long time, I felt my husband was violating my boundaries. His behavior was unacceptable. I thought he should have been ashamed of himself. But guess what? Nancy Levine goes on to say, I let it happen. It is all you. You are the one who's got to be accountable and stand up for that. And finding out and getting clear, let's back up again. Everything that I'm talking about is getting clear on what your needs and desires are. It's really important to figure that out so you can put up those boundaries and you can use that technique of taking try out of your vocabulary. Really start sprinkling that throughout your life now. Okay, so Nancy Levine goes on to talk about, I went back over and over expecting a different outcome from the same man. Of course, he did trample on my needs and desires, but only because I opened the door for him to do so. Did you hear that? I went back over and over expecting a different outcome from the same man. Of course, he did trample on my needs and desires, but only because I opened the door for him to do so. So that could be a him, a her, a he, a she, a kid, whatever that is. Again, it's you looking at that and having that awareness, taking accountability and responsibility that those boundaries are something that you have to create. All right. So Nancy goes on to say, still not convinced? Question. The next time you believe someone else is crossing your boundary, remind yourself that it isn't about the person's behavior. It's about how you take care of yourself in the behavior, or if the behavior continues. Let me repeat that. The next time you believe someone else is crossing your boundary, remind yourself that it isn't about the person's behavior. It is about how you take care of yourself if the behavior continues. Boom, chaka, chaka, boom, chaka, chaka. I'm like, kaboom. Okay, so Nancy goes on to say, most of us do not want to take responsibility for what happens to us. But the reality is that except in cases of violence, more on that as she talks in her book, no one can cross our boundaries unless we allow it. If you believe someone else is doing something to you, you're stuck in a victim mindset. If you're allowing someone to push through your boundary, that's a choice you have made. So if you are putting up boundaries and they're still pushing through, you still have the choice. This is super powerful. You've got to remind them that that behavior is not okay, right? It's about you. It's about how you take care of yourself if the behavior continues. Oh, smack a Rooney. Okay, I'm going to remind you about Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free with Nancy Levine. It's an incredible book. She's one of my great teachers. I go back to this book so many times. Now, even in the conversation of boundaries and all of that, I want to talk about boundaries we can't control. So we get really clear on that. And I know that this is really important. Boundaries we can't control. I want to make it clear that the boundaries I'm talking about in this book, and also me as Sue, are ones which we have some measure of control. I'm not talking about instances when someone has attacked you, sexually violated you, or held you against your will. The last thing I want is for those who are true victims to take on the responsibility for what happened to them. Did you guys hear that? So make sure you see that discernment. Far too often, rape and abuse victims blame themselves, which is not the case of what we're talking about in these boundaries here. This is damaging and simply untrue. There are times when people can, I don't know what that word is, Benny. That's funny. Okay, I'm going to have to read back. There are sometimes when people have violent situations and setting boundaries, but I'm well aware that there are other times when this isn't easy or safe. So it's important that you guys understand that, and Nancy goes on to say more details about that, but also what I'm talking about as well. There are different styles of boundaries. Again, even with these incredible thought leaders like the Nancy Levines that come and talk to us about boundaries, first and foremost, you have to have the awareness that this is something that you have created that is happening in your life and lifestyle. So you then have to have the education and the teacher that comes in and says, all right, you've got to self-regulate, you've got to look at the contrast, you've got to have the awareness and educate yourself and take a stand for yourself and understand what your needs are. I think this is so important. And when I talk about needs and desires, your personal code of conduct, you heard me talk about and promote about the PCC. The PCC is your personal code of conduct. I have 3 areas in which I teach this, and that is entrepreneurs getting really clear, entrepreneurs and small businesses getting really clear and aligning with your team so you don't lose money, time, and energy. If your bottom line is really important, it's going to be really important for you to get really clear on what that personal code of conduct is for your business so you can bring a team on that aligns with that. And then the second is new families. It's the same thing with parenting and aligning with the same values. Ultimately, and unfortunately, there could be divorce. Then third is single, and you are looking for a partnership. You've got to get really clear on who you are, how you're showing up, and what you're attracting. And your personal code of conduct is exactly that. It is a profound clarity tool for you to align that's authentic to yourself and getting really clear on what your needs and desires are so you then can attract that team, that partnership, the parent-team values that are really important. You know what? Let's take a quick commercial break. It's almost 8:30, but before I start diving in deep into setting up boundaries, what that looks like, and the discernment, and then also sarcasm, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to chat just a little bit more on the social media. So if you would like to join us there for about 3 minutes, we're over there on YouTube at 11:50 a.m. and of course, Facebook and Twitter. So we'll be right back. We're talking about boundaries today, you guys.
Cool. All clear. Still live on all the platforms.
Okay, so I'm going to do a little snippet here on YouTube. This is about codependence and boundaries. Shiitake! Codependent behavior is one of the main reasons many of us fail to set boundaries in our lives. That is so important. So really conquering the process of codependency. It's going to be so important. And again, backing up, like I'll educate, and for myself as well, it's you getting clear on what that looks like, right? What does it look like? Am I codependent? Having that awareness. Pull out the library and look at what codependency is. Look at that in your life. It's really valuable to have that discernment and to look at that contrast so you can then learn from said opportunity. So having a desire separate from others can feel foreign to those of us who are extreme codependents. Let me repeat that. We're talking about codependence and boundaries. Having a desire separate from others can feel foreign to those of us who are extreme codependents. Often when we are asked what we want, we automatically flash to what others want. Our desire becomes less about our own well-being than about whatever it takes to stay safe in the relationship and other people. I know I'm completely guilty of this. I know I was like that with my daughters, and I take full responsibility for that. I also know that I was raised in that energy, that frequency, and becoming even more aware of that, and slowly but surely changing that out, changing the neural pathway, changing the chemical releases. There's a lot of value that happens in that change, and recognizing and being aware of that codependency that you have in your life. So just change it. It's, again, that contrast is simply an opportunity to change. So learn about codependency and those boundaries is super important.
Let me know when you're ready to come back.
We're ready.
All right, stand by.
Woohoo! Welcome back. Sue Lundquist here. Clarity with Sue used to be Gratitude Cafe. It's all about the same love. It's all still about new perspective, new thoughts, new ideas. And again, it's getting clear, reclaiming, rediscovering, redesigning an authentic and genuine self that provides confidence. It provides alignment. It provides, in business and entrepreneurship, if you're not aligned and aligned with your team, it's going to affect your bottom line. If you're not clear and aligned and have an aligned personal code of conduct with family and raising children, that personal value can end up in divorce. If you are a single person and you're looking for that aligned partnership, you've got to get really clear on who you are, how you're showing up. And at the top of the hour, we were talking about setting boundaries, what boundaries look like, and the importance of taking responsibility for those boundaries. And one of my favorite teachers is Nancy Levine, and Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free is one of the latest books I was reading from. We were at the break on YouTube and we talked about codependency and boundaries, and that is one of the number one foundational techniques and pieces that you're going to have to take a look at, because if you have a tendency, or you were raised in codependency, I know that I was, you have to have that awareness and then change that personal code of conduct on how you're showing up in the world. So you're going to have to really look at that. You're going to have to look at how codependency's shown up in your life, how you have reacted based on being in a codependent and reactive mode, taking things personally, all that kind of good, juicy stuff. Take a look at that, really kind of lean into that, and then leaning into it, looking at the contrast, and just taking that opportunity to learn, because that, it softens that edge. It's you loving on you. It's, you've heard me say that, it's loving you to 2.0, right? I'm loving you to 2.0. I'm loving me to 2.0. It's important that we gain the tools, the recognition, the discernment, and the awareness, and then the clarity and the education on how we evolve and transform and change. So we talked about Nancy Levine. We talked about I thought it was really powerful. What does she call it though? The anatomy of a boundary. That was so important. And then owning and trusting that your boundaries have been crossed and it's your responsibility. So if you find yourself letting other people make plans for you, the movies, food, does self-care feel selfish to you? Do you find yourself feeling resentful towards others because they didn't seem to take your needs into consideration? Woo! Guess what? It's you. It's like the orgasm conversation too. It's your responsibility to do that for yourself and to teach the other person. You have to take on that accountability. I know that is a completely different conversation. However, it's so important because it's an analogy for life. It's the pleasure centers. And I want you to have the pleasure in your life and the joy and the win at life mindset, the pleasures, the happy chemicals that are released when, oxytocins, the dopamines, the endorphins, all that good stuff, right? We don't want the fight or flights anymore. I don't want you in that. I want you in homeostasis. So top of the hour, we talked about that. Then during YouTube, during the break, we talked about codependency really briefly. It was only about 3 minutes, but it's kind of like that squeaky wheel. If it's kind of got a squeaky wheel, a thorn for you, please lean into it. Please look at that contrast and look at that as an opportunity to learn. Now I'm going to go into another conversation around sarcasm and boundaries, because it is, again, based on you not getting your needs met. You have to take responsibility and accountability for that. And why is sarcasm play in that soup? I'm going to get to that in just a second. Now, let me repeat what we're doing. We've been talking about this whole hour about setting boundaries, what boundaries look like, and the importance of it. And it's because you asked me. It's always been. I've asked you guys to reach out to me and give me your top 3 questions. And consistently, it's about boundaries. What are they? How can I take responsibility? How can I be accountable? Understanding that accountability and responsibility to it. What it looks like when I'm not setting boundaries. And we talked at the top of the hour about one, taking the word try out of your vocabulary, and 2, really looking at the codependent in you that is facilitating this people pleaser and this lack of boundaries. If you get nothing else, look at those 2 things. Lean into the opportunity of the contrast that I'm talking about. Again, you heard me talk about the contrast. The contrast is just simply things that you're coming up against that you could adjective as fear, doubt, shames, and guilts. Let's eradicate that. Okay. Yes, there are opportunities and times where there are fuels to getting to where your needs need to be. Meaning, you've heard this statement, fear is focus. Well, if you stay in fear too long, you're in fight or, that fight or flight mechanism. It's not going to keep your body in homeostasis. It's not going to be sustainable for a long time. So where I'm going with this is just simply look at the contrast, look at the opportunity you have to learn. And if you keep yourself and your nervous system in homeostasis, you will be able to learn, comprehend, communicate, and educate far greater than you ever could when you're in fight or flight. Because you're in fight or flight, it's all going to the external stuff. You're running, you're going, right? Okay. So let's jump into this contrast or this conversation about sarcasm. And the sarcasm, let me read some definitions here. Sarcasm refers to the use of words that mean the opposite of what you really want to say, and especially in order to insult someone or to show irritation or sometimes to just be funny. Now, let's put a pin in that. Just to be funny, we're talking Friends, the episode on Friends, and there's lots of sarcasm in there. The writers have written this in. It's expected. There's sarcasm as a joke commodity. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about sarcasm as it refers to you not getting your needs met. So let me reframe this or re-say this again. Sarcasm refers to the use of words that mean the opposite of what you really want to say, especially in order to insult somebody or to show irritation. For example, saying that you're really on top of things to describe to a group of people who are very organized and is using sarcasm. Go and look it up. You can look it up for yourself. So what do I mean by this in emotions? Let me talk to you about comprehension and emotional impact. The irony and sarcasm are well, let me back up. Irony and sarcasm are forms of non-literal language that are often used to communicate the opposite of what we literally feel. Okay, so let's look at that. Excuse me. What we literally feel, what our needs are, what is our personal code of conduct, how are we showing up in the world, how am I representing myself, am I proud of myself, what can I do to bring pride to myself, how can I show up in a manner, what makes me happy and proud, right? So sarcasm, and those were just a litter of questions that you could be asking yourself, helping you to get clear on who you are and how you're showing up. Again, me teaching a personal code of conduct, and then you going to the self-regulating tools, which are the craziness clarity tools. I just put a little dabble in there because I'm going to start launching and doing in-person personal code of conduct courses, education classes, to the WeWorks and the entrepreneurs of the world, to the single organizations, and also the new parenting organizations as well. So send me an email if that's something that you would like to get more information on. Going back to sarcasm and not getting our needs met and boundaries. The boundaries was one of the top things that you guys wanted me to talk about. So if you're not getting your needs met and you're throwing out sarcasm because it is opposite to what you're getting, you need to really look at that and see if that's really what you meant. When I hear sarcasm, I know that they're hurting inside. I know that there is something going on, that their needs are not being met. They haven't been able to communicate. They're scared to communicate, fear of rejection, fear of rejection. Let's just use rejection as a big, huge umbrella, because that's a valuable adjective to describe something that would be happening to us. So let's look at that. Let's look at where in our life that we are using sarcasm. Let's lean into that. And again, looking at contrast, an opportunity to learn. Look at where you're being sarcastic. Are you doing it in work? Are you communicating it at work? Are you communicating it being sarcasm in your personal life? And if you are, look at it and ask yourself why. Why did I respond that way? Or why, and I use the word snarky because that's my internal language. You're being a little snarky. I use it to myself. I'm like, okay, I do a check-in. I'm like, what's going on inside of me? Where is it that my needs aren't getting met? So, and I use the language that I use. If I'm upset with somebody, if it's a partnership, like, this has been so common with my folks that I've talked to in the dating world. So let's go to this. When you're flirting, having a good time, and the conversation is kind of switched to a more intimate conversation, then you meet in person, and then there's an expectation by the other person without having a conversation, without any kind of conversation of what that could look like. Your expectation based on how you think they should show up. Not an expectation, I'm going to have a miracle today. There's complete difference, right? You following me here? This is an expectation on how you think they should be showing up, and that's incorrect. So that expectation, and we're talking about, like, for example, the dating bubble, and they have made a point to come and see you and talk to you and hang out with you, still with the underlying expectation that there could be intimacy, for example. And then they start getting sarcastic and snarky because things aren't moving as they expected in the dating realm, right? They had expected, well, it was going to move along and there would be intimacy. And again, I'm talking to those that happen to be in the single world, because I've had these conversations so much about those needs and desires not being met, not being communicated, and then resentment by the other one's expectations of how they should have reacted or responded. So it's really important that in that dating world that you're very clear on that personal code of conduct. You're communicating your boundaries. get curious and have that compassionate, curious conversation. What that does, it opens your heart, it creates confidence, it builds external confidence in environments and aligns with people that you want to have in your world. Now, if you were the person that are on the other side where you had that expectation, enough with the shame and the guilt and the frustration. Just look at that, own it, take accountability for it, and use this as an opportunity to check in with yourself and go, okay, what could I have done better? What could I have done differently that I know that's truly authentic and aligned and genuine for me? And change it. You can then, if it's important to you in that relationship, apologize to that person for the way you showed up or the way you treated them, the sarcasm, whatever that looks like. Hopefully that makes sense to all of you. I talk about all of this, and I would like somebody here having a conversation back and forth, but it's kind of like I'm talking to myself and just educating here. So we've covered a lot about boundaries. I talk a lot about boundaries and go head deep into boundaries in my Craziness to Clarity course. Now, the Craziness to Clarity course, the C2C program, is all about self-regulating, mindset hacks, positive psychology, law of attraction, really great proven techniques and tools to help you self-regulate after you have gotten clear with your personal code of conduct. Now, is it one or the other? No, you can totally, if you can totally go in there and get some really valuable tools in the C2C program for self-regulating a mindset, totally valuable. Is it even more profound if you do your PCC and get really clear on what your personal code of conduct is, and then as you're setting up boundaries, as you're languaging boundaries, going in and using the C2C techniques and tools? Absolutely, it's super valuable. Both will be of massive value regardless of which way you go. It could be a standalone, and either you take the PCC or you are already clear on who you are, and then you get the self-regulating tools. If you are a person that in entrepreneurship, you have a team and you have a lot of turnover, if you have lack of management, lack of communication, lack of alignment, money, time, all that stuff being wasted. I mean, bottom line is important to you. It's going to be really important that you set up your personal code of conduct within your company, within your team, in that organization. You can do it on your own. Just set up your personal code of conduct. Really get clear on what that looks like. Align with that. Make 10, 12 adjectives or 3 adjectives to describe that's how you and your team are going to consistently show up and grow and transform and align with that team. It's really important. If you want, you can also learn the personal code of conduct and the tips and tools that I teach as well. If you are a new family and parenting, you're married, you have a new family, getting married, it is vitally important that you both are aligned with each other's values, especially going into raising children and having each other's back and aligning with that. Otherwise, it will lead to divorce, because if you're not aligned, there's going to be too much contrast that you just can't come together on. Massive differences in religions and beliefs. If you guys can come to a unified front of what your code of conduct is and staying consistent to that, that's going to be really important. So create that. If you are single and you are looking for that ideal partnership that you really want, you've got to get really clear on how you're showing up, how you want to, or who you want to attract in the world. If you want to be the party guy, the party girl, and that's where you're at right now, then go for it. Do that. Honor it. Just be honest with yourself. And then if you want to really start honing in and looking for that ideal, loving, trusting, safe relationship, then go in and start doing the work of getting really clear on who you are and how you're showing up in the world. Well, you're getting clear either way. You're party girl, party guy, or you're looking for the ideal partnership. Regardless, whether it's me or anybody else, I'm telling you, setting up your personal code of conduct, which is your personal value system, and then languaging your personal boundaries around your personal code of conduct, setting up rules, setting for yourself, and setting up boundaries and self-regulating around this new personal code of conduct, this new life and lifestyle. It's going to bring confidence. It's going to bring abundance. It's going to bring joy. That confidence, that pride in that heart pride. I call it heart pride. You heard me talk about it on my last show. And it's not that ego pride, it's heart pride that, you know what, I did good. Attaboy, attagirl. I'm proud of myself for that. Own it. Honor that in yourself. You should be proud. You should take ownership into aligning with that self-love and self-care. So if that sounds good to you, I'd love to chat with you. You guys can go to my website, which is claritywithsue.com. Sign up for the newsletter. And there is also, I believe it's claritywithsue.com/PCC. And we'll make sure that we have this in the show notes that you can get on the wait list for the online and in-person personal code of conduct training that I'm going to be doing. If you want me to come to your organization and teach and educate on that, and then also add in some self-regulating tools, I would love to do that. I mean, that's my sweet spot. I want to be in person. I want to be engaging with you in the audience, and all of us swimming in all of that and learning from it, from ourselves. So we talked a little bit about that resentment and sarcasm. I know, and I'm taking deep breaths and really loving and leaning into this moment, because for so many of us, we do not realize how that sarcasm is hurting us and the other person, and the confusion that is playing part in this whole conversation. The confusion is you're not getting your needs met. The confusion is you're being sarcastic and not really showing up and being kind of, well, not kind of, you are. You're being sarcasm, like I said, the dictionary says, where was that? I got to read the definition. What does it say here? It says that refers to the use of words that mean the opposite of what you really want to say, especially in order to insult somebody or show them or show irritation. So if you are showing irritation or insulting somebody, is that how you want to show up? Now, again, hang on. I said this earlier. I'm not talking about an episode of Friends that the script has been written in and there's sarcasm and it's meant for funny, right? That you expect that. I'm talking about sarcasm as it refers to you truly leaning into what your needs are and what that looks like, and getting really clear. First, having the awareness that you're doing it, then getting really clear on how you want to show up. And if you want to show up by the definition of insulting somebody or showing irritation, then own that. That's not anybody I want to attract into my life. Let's be clear. Let's be proactive. Let's be in our intention of conversation, being proactive, loving, and kind, and saying, these are my needs. These are my desires. And there are moments that you're just like, yeah, that's it. What is it that they say? It's like, I don't know what, I've lost the word. It's like your end all. What's that? Well, I forget what that word is. You guys probably are saying it out loud and I can't think of it. But anyways, let's wrap this show up. It's been a good, juicy show. I'm trying to remember what that it's like, in a relationship, you're like, nope, it can't. I'm trying to remember the word. Anyways. This has been a great show. Audience, thank you so much for asking these questions. Again, if you are just joining us and wondering why we had this deep conversation about boundaries and sarcasm and taking accountability and responsibility, it's because you asked for it. It's been a very consistent education and platform for me to come on and talk about boundaries and talking about your needs and those needs not getting met. So thank you so much for engaging and asking those tough questions, because I walk the talk with you guys. I get it. I understand. So remember, take the word try out of your vocabulary. Really look at where codependency is showing up in your life, in your language, your emotions, your reactions. Really look at that and then change it. And you can change that by taking the word try out of your vocabulary. That could be number one. And number two, just having the awareness of it is really going to be so powerful for you, and confidence building. It's going to be so valuable. Again, as the umbrella, it's a contrast. Look at this umbrella as just an opportunity to learn. Have the CCs in life, foster the CCs in life, compassionate curiosity for yourself and others. Kind of takes that sting. Get really curious about how you're feeling or not feeling, or the other person. Curious, and then that means listen. Listen without resentment. Listen without taking things personally. Just get compassionate and learn from the contrast of opportunity. I love this conversation, guys. Keep bringing me the questions. I really, really, this is my sweet spot. I love educating, and even more so in person. So I would love to come to your organization and or entrepreneurial kind of WeWork environments to have this conversation. So with that being said, go to claritywithsue.com, sign up for the newsletter, get some more information. And yeah, I guess that's really it. Reclaim, rediscover, redesign your authentic and genuine self. Get those happy chemicals, the oxytocins and the dopamines firing up, not the other stuff. We want the juicy stuff going. I want you to enjoy and love. So stay above the line, stay in your lane, stay in love, stay in compassion, if that's where you choose to be in your personal code of conduct in life and your lifestyle. Always remember that your life and business have got to be aligned. If they're not, and you're working for somebody that's not aligned with your personal code of conduct, it will end up in a dissolution. It's not manageable. And that could be your marriage as well. So I love you guys. Get really clear on how you're showing up, your personal code of conduct, then really applying those self-regulating tools to keep you sustained and above the line. I love you. And I'll talk to you guys next week. We'll see you later. And until then, each of you are a gift. Get out there and share yourself with the world.